Now people can hear us.
Okay.
Hello.
Hi, everybody.
How's it going?
You ready to dive in?
Yep.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Fundamentalists podcast. This is a podcast hosted by myself, Elliot Morgan, as well as my podcasting and life and housing partner, Peter Rollins. I'm just joking. We're not life partners. We are housing partners.
We are. Well, you know, it's a fine line.
It's a fine line, yeah. We really take care of one another as we walk through this life and toward death. And this is a podcast that mixes comedy and philosophy and life stuff with different ideas and all sorts of fun things. We are just getting back into the swing of things with our second episode, and it is very exciting. I think we're going to upload this at the same time, maybe?
I'm happy to do that. But you know what? Maybe we should be spreading them out for whenever the inevitable failure to to make one comes along.
You'll find out, folks. Whenever you're listening to this, you'll know. So this is very fun. Peter is from Northern Ireland, if you're new here, and he is a speaker and a theologian and a philosopher, and I do comedy primarily on the internet, but oftentimes on stage, like May 22nd at the Tampa Improv and May 31st at the Fremont Abbey in Seattle. And that was a plug. And if you would like to support the podcast, you can go to trywink.com/thefundamentalist. That's TRYWINC. And you can order wine and you can drink while you listen to us, and that makes it a better experience.
Yes.
Anyway, Pete, how are you this fine morning?
I'm doing great. It's really good to be back.
It is. Yeah, you dove right in. You've been getting a lot of stuff done. You've been out and about, but you've also been relaxing. It seems, from my vantage point, it seems like you're adjusting very nicely.
I am. It's good to. I haven't gone down to the hot tub yet. That's one thing. Maybe we should plan that later on today.
Yeah, that sounds nice. When you were gone, I told myself I was going to go down to the hot tub several times. I think I went down like once or twice. But it's nice just to know it's there.
That's exactly it.
Mm-hmm. A lot of people hate hot tubs, which I get. It's a very fair thing, especially if it's a shared one. But no one ever uses that.
No one uses it. I mean, there must be 100 people live here. No one uses it.
Anyway, so this is a... so here's what happened. This morning, I was over at Grace's, and I was drinking coffee, and I knew we were going to podcast, and I got a text message from you. And I was like, oh, he's probably asking, like, what time I'm going to be back. And the text just said, lobsters aren't castrated. And I knew immediately what that meant. And I knew to the point that it didn't even register that was a weird thing to read. Yeah. And I knew in that moment that you were thinking about Jordan Peterson, and you were thinking, my guess, by proxy, Zizek and their recent debate, which we have not talked about.
I was thinking maybe we should talk about it in a few months' time when we're definitely completely doing it at the wrong time.
Uh-huh.
You know, we may as well, because we're
right. There's still a little bit of relevance.
Yeah, there's still a little bit of relevance to it. So let's wait till it's not relevant.
Yeah. Well, I mean, let's dive in, because obviously you were in Northern Ireland and I was not, and so we did not get a chance to really talk about this debate that happened. But for those of you who don't know what that means, Jordan Peterson is a clinical psychologist who is a superstar in the world of like self-help currently. And has a lot of strong opinions on strong things, and he wrote a book called, what is it called, like 12
Rules for Life.
12 Rules for Life, an antidote to chaos or something like that. And so anyway, I looked up a thing about kind of what he believes and what you're referencing when you say lobsters. Do you want me to dive into this?
Oh yeah, please do, yeah.
So this is from theconversation.com, and this is an article from like a year and a half ago. And it basically says, psychologist Jordan Peterson says, lobsters help to explain why human hierarchies exist. Do they? It's one of those articles that, like, you know. Anyway, hierarchies are everywhere. It is often argued that they are a social construct invented to allow certain people, such as white men, to have power over others. But not everyone agrees. While promoting his new book, Jordan Peterson has sparked debate by arguing that hierarchies are natural to some extent. And to prove his point, he uses the example of lobsters, ladies and gentlemen, which humans share a common evolutionary ancestor with. I mean, humans share a common evolutionary ancestor with every living creature.
Well, I guess, but I wonder how that works. You would know, you did zoology.
Yeah, it all goes back to the same.
It all goes back, but there's different branches.
Yeah,
and I guess we're maybe on a similar branch. I don't know.
Phylums are what they're called. Phyla.
Oh, is that right?
Phyla, I think.
Look at that.
I don't know where that came from.
That education was.
I just blacked out
money
for
well
a second.
spent.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally. I know 4 words. The higher up a hierarchy a lobster climbs, the brain mechanism helps make sure serotonin is available. The more serotonin is available. So basically, they have serotonin. We have serotonin. Lower serotonin is associated with more negative emotions. Higher serotonin is like, I'm going to get you, I'm going to win, I'm the best. And it's associated with dominance and all that stuff. So lobsters are known to basically adopt aggressive postures as well, sort of like how dominant creatures will. And basically, Jordan Peterson is, I believe, making a case for meritocracy and saying that may the best creature win, essentially. Yeah. And he's rather than sort of have, I don't know, he talks about like outcome based equality or something like that. It's like versus chance based. He has all these terms that I was into it for a while and I kind of fell out because it got kind of repetitive. But anyway, I'm talking a lot. Why don't you sort of jump into
with that? Yeah. So it's kind of a bit of a Nietzschean perspective. It's in the animal kingdom. Lobsters are one example, but you see it everywhere. Is there are dominant, submissive hierarchies that you see everywhere, and you see that in human societies as well. And the view that Peterson's arguing, which I think is a common view that most people accept, is that there are certain hierarchies that exist in the world. And then when you apply that to human society, you kind of get people who say one of two things usually. If you're more conservative, you might say, or you might tend to say, that we live in a type of meritocracy where you work hard, you're honest, etc. You will more likely than not go far. Yeah. And then on the other side, liberals will say, well, no, we don't live in a meritocracy. We live in a structure in which certain people get to the top whenever they don't merit it. Mm-hmm. But both are assuming, in a sense, the goodness of meritocracy. One's just saying we kind of, broadly speaking, kind of have a meritocracy, not completely, and you can change it, make it better. Yeah, basically,
meritocracy is good. Some people think we already have it, and some people think we need to get to a place where we have it.
Yes.
Right? But it all presupposes that meritocracy is...
Yeah. Which basically presupposes a certain very close connection with the rest of the animal kingdom. Okay. Where you see basically the stronger creature will have dominance in the pack.
Survival of the fittest, yeah.
Yeah, okay. All of that. And the issue with this, right? So I want to kind of go like, is there an issue with it? How does it work? And I think it's this. So let's see how I think we can...
Well, let's have some fun.
Yeah, let's have some... Yes, I don't know. Do we describe this as
fun?
This is fun for me, but not for many people. This is fun for us.
I'm always worried that you think someone's going to...
Get bored.
Well, that ship sails, but every episode. But no, it doesn't. But I worry that you... like no one really cares, right? Like,
you think that you think correctly probably that I worry I want to be precise.
That this is not an academic journal and it's okay to sort of meander. Yeah.
Meander, yeah, exactly. You remind me that that's good.
Yes, I remind you that the bar is very low. Even if you F up, there's not really any side effects.
Well, okay, so here it goes then. You could say that within the animal kingdom, the word hierarchy is used to describe relative strengths and weaknesses, right? So you see that in the animal kingdom there is conflict, and the animals that are more dominant, you go there higher up the hierarchy. So hierarchy is something that you impose on the system to explain it. Okay. Whereas within human society, hierarchy pre-exists us. We are born into it. So what that means, and it's a very slight difference, but it cashes out in huge ways, is that the authority already exists, and you just need someone to step into it.
You fall into it. You're born into privilege, or you're born into oppression, or you're born into... I mean, that's kind of...
or you work your way into it or whatever, but what happens is it's simply the fact that you can occupy a position of authority that doesn't reflect your expertise or skills or strength. So it's kind of like... This is what Winnicott means when he talks about the good enough parent. So he says that basically there is already symbolically a type of family, and concrete human beings step in. So there's father and there's mother, and then individuals play those roles. And as long as you don't screw up the rule, your kid's going to be fine.
Yeah.
So a good enough parent doesn't create a good enough child. A good enough parent actually creates a very healthy child, because there's already symbolically these hierarchical structures that exist that we step into, that we have to embody, but that doesn't necessarily reflect our strength or our skills or our abilities. Um, and this is called symbolic castration, because it's where you
Symbolic castration.
Yeah.
Here we go.
Here we go. Symbolic castration is where you realize that there's a difference between you as a judge. Say you're a judge, and you as an individual person with conflictual desires.
Yeah.
You realize that you are not your role. You are not. You're playing the role of a father, but you're probably a pretty crap person in many ways. You're playing the role of a mother, but actually you're full of self-doubt and hysterical questions.
That reminds me of like people that are like, when you rag on somebody and they're like, how could you say that? He has 2 kids, and it's like, because he's a father doesn't mean he's a good guy.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah,
like, that's his. He might be a great father, doesn't mean he's a good guy.
Yeah, he could be. Yeah, there's the symbolic role of the father.
Yeah.
And you're appealing to that, but actually then there's the real individual who could be an asshole.
Yeah.
That saying kind of exposes that weirdness. Is like, oh, how could they lie? They're a mother. I've heard that said. I heard that somewhere recently. Someone said, well, like they're a mother. You think they're going to be lying. And of course, in a sense, because symbolically the mother doesn't lie. Symbolically, a mother has the best interests of their child, etc., etc.
And when you think mother, you think your own mother, who you will naturally sort of like esteem.
Yes.
And so if you see somebody else who's a mother, they're doing something, and you're like, well, and that person's mother, and my mom is wonderful, so therefore this person should also be wonderful.
But your mother isn't wonderful. I've met her. No.
Yeah. She is a pill.
Yeah. Your mother is, there is within, you're basically thinking of your mother as a symbolic figure who is perfect, but also there's your concrete actual mother who is just like any other human being, flawed, all of that.
I assume she's flawed. Yeah, I've never seen any proof, but
exactly. Yeah. So
one day.
That is kind of symbolic castration, and the issue is in human societies is that we work our way into, or we're given certain authority, spaces of authority, and what happens is if we disavow symbolic castration, we start to think we deserve it. And Hollywood's a great case example of this.
Oh, it's the best, yeah.
Yeah. So it's not
I'm a star.
and I deserve to be. I worked hard for this.
There's a song called Little As You're Told by a band called Joywave. And it's, it has a line in it that it's like, you're supposed to be famous. And it's like all this like, put thing on the credit card, like you deserve this, like this is your time, like all that stuff. And it's very like, these are just the little lies that you're told throughout the course of your life.
And that's the disavowal of symbolic castration. It's like, yeah, of course I deserve to have all of this stuff I've worked. And the person might have worked hard for it, but also a person who is struggling to get by might be working hard as well.
Yeah.
So the denial of symbolic castration is where you start to think of yourself like a lobster, i.e. the lobster who's dominant is dominant not for symbolic reasons. They're dominant because they're the strongest lobster.
They actually literally are physically the strongest
lobster.
Yes.
So when you disavow your symbolic castration, you're treating yourself like a lobster, and you're saying that I have this dominant position in society
because I am the best. Yeah. Exactly. Whereas the lobster is like just trying to survive and happens to have gotten the genetic lottery, and then we look at that as scientists and we go, oh look, there's a hierarchy if you look at it this way.
Yeah.
But then we go, oh, if there's a hierarchy there and there's a hierarchy here, this must be the same type of hierarchy. But really, one hierarchy is just us making sense out of the primarily chaotic natural world, and then the hierarchy we have now is so that we don't all kill each other.
Yeah. I think I can. You did that fast speaking thing you do, which I like, so I have to catch up with you.
Yeah, so, it's how I vary being wrong.
Right. Oh, very good. That's a good policy.
I think that made sense. I think that I like the differentiation of looking at the populations of, or looking at the natural world, and it is like you're saying, it's a subtle difference, but it's
a difference of language, by the way. That's what it is, in a sense, is that when you become self-conscious, when you are the creatures of language, you enter into symbolic worlds, and symbolic worlds are different from they arise out of, but they're different from material worlds. So lobster doesn't exist within a symbolic world, but human beings do, and that changes things subtly.
Lobsters don't know that lobsters exist, which is
yes, exactly. Yeah, lobsters don't think
and
about what it is to be a lobster.
Yeah, the big tough lobster isn't like I'm the big tough lobster.
Yeah, and they're not existentially questioning themselves. So whenever you become a subjective being, you start to you're divided. You're going to, what is it to be human? What is it to be me? You know, these questions.
The stuff that's so fun.
Yeah,
that haunts us. I think to back up a little bit though, to give context, because I don't think Jordan Peterson, and being a clinical psychologist, is not trying to be a scientist, or nor is he trying to be. Well, he is trying to be a philosopher, but like the motive, like the theme of it is essentially like you're saying, work your ass off, commit to what you're doing, give your be focus, clean your room and do all that stuff. And it's very, I don't think that's the be all and end all of how people should live their lives, but I do think that when you're in your 20s and when you've grown up in a society that doesn't really have strong figures like that, that are father figures or whatever, it's helpful in the short term to be like, oh yeah, I can have some agency in my life and I can make decisions. Because I do think what I like about Peterson is I think that he has reinvigorated the fact that you can at least give yourself the illusion that you have control over your life and start making active decisions that actually perpetuate you into a state of, I would say, less chaos and less sadness and all that, and less sort of feeling out of control. I don't think it lasts, and I don't think that I don't think that you won't eventually harm yourself if you make a life out of being like, I'm gonna be the big tough lobster. But I do think that there is a good lesson on the surface. Yeah,
there's nothing wrong. God, yeah, there's nothing wrong with working hard, and yeah, exactly, absolutely. It's, for me, it's a technical issue. It's just that what gets hidden and all of that. You're right. It's like, so there's a good advice, work hard, try to be motivated,
take action.
I mean, my interest is more in if you don't do those things, what's stopping you from doing them. So, but still, I want to be a person who works hard.
Yeah, it is interesting. I mean, in my own career and going through, and in my 30s now, I feel good. I feel good. I don't feel great, but I feel good about where I'm at and what I've done and contributed. But I do know that 20-something drive to work hard, I know that's not the motivation anymore. I knew in my 20s I was trying to become successful, I was trying to become rich, I was trying to get to a place where I could have a really comfortable lifestyle, and I'm still trying to do that, but the motivations don't seem like they are what they were when I was in my 20s. And I think that if I were to read something like Peterson in my 20s, I'd be way more motivated by it. But now where I'm at, I'm sort of why am I I have this, I mentioned it in the last episode, but I have this meeting about this show, and it's so silly. It's a silly concept, and there's so many silly things that make up what I do. So it's now I'm embracing the silliness, and I think it's helping a lot. But in my 20s, I would never have done that, and I think it's very difficult to embrace the if you remove my career from the context of comedy or internet or entertainment or whatever. If you remove your career from just the kind of novelty of it, if it was a more traditional 9-to-5 thing, I don't know. I've lost my thought. Dang, it was a good one too. I feel like it was a good one. Let's sit in silence for a second. Where was I going? Do you know where I was going with that?
What just you were saying about your motivation has changed from when you were in your
20s. That's it. Yes, thank you. Oh my gosh, that worked. I love when it works.
There you go.
I lost it again. No, I think that if people approached any kind of job or any kind of hierarchy with a sense of lightness and a sense of fun and a sense of silliness and a sense of this is not gonna last forever, even if it's good and even if it's bad, then I think people would maybe be a little bit actually maybe more productive and more free thinking and more probably more at peace than if they were to adopt sort of I'm the lobster and I'm going to take control over everything. Does that make sense?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, you're saying about you take it a little bit less seriously.
But also still working hard, but the motivation not being this thing that's tied to your inner core. This is my value as a human being.
Yeah. the issue with the whole lobster thing is just that it's incorrect. It's not even as morally wrong. Is that once you realize that human beings, authority structure, hierarchy isn't something that is a way of describing dominant, submissive kind of postures, but actually hierarchies are symbolic structures that pre-exist us, that we are born into. Once you realize that, there's that we are not, we don't, that the meritocracy, there's something kind of wrong about that. It's like, think about it in kind of fetish terms. You get someone to dominate you in a S&M scene. They don't actually have to be some dominant, a powerful, completely non-lacking subject who is in control. They just have to act the role. You want that authority structure, so you just go out and find someone who'll fulfill it, and all they have to do is be good enough at the role.
I see. Yeah.
Read a few YouTube articles or whatever, and then they can play the role. They don't have to be that authority figure. They simply have to.
Yeah, they're just like pockets. It's like you step into that pocket of being a mom or a dad, or
a president or a politician, or.
But you're right, there is an interest. It's almost less of a pocket, more like a tube. Like if you can just get in the tube and be good enough to get in the tube will shoot you down. It's like the kid in Willy Wonka that gets sucked out of the. Yeah. When he falls in the chocolate, where he gets sucked through the tube. That's all life is.
It's like the symbolic structure is all we want it. So like the child wants the father and mother figures, and then people enact those rules, and the issue is, and this is the issue with the evolutionary psychology approach that Peterson takes, is that if you think that authority works in some way, in some meritocracy way, then you disavow symbolic castration, and then what you get is tyrants. You get people who
they drink their own, they
drink their own Kool-Aid.
Or they're high off their own supply, basically.
Oh yeah, those are perfect ways to describe this. And that we see that happening a lot. It's not that a leader needs to be an expert. It's actually they can be pretty rubbish at their job as long as they realize they are, and are taking advice from others and realize that they are the voice of the people, and they have to enact that. But when a leader starts to think of themselves as an expert who knows better than everybody else, then you start to get in real trouble. So the disavowal of symbolic castration leads to a lot of danger whenever somebody identifies with their position. Absolutely. One is they're wrong. Someone is never wholly a mother or a father or a president or a prime minister or a dominatrix or whatever. These are roles that are played. And
where do these come from? Where are these? I mean, I'm sure that's its own TED talk, but like, is it? I mean, can they be changed? Can they be? I mean, people talk about the family structure changing and sort of like the nuclear family going by the wayside, and then millennials don't have kids, and millennials barely even have sex, and it's like it's interesting because you hear constantly, especially these days, about how these structures are changing or society is changing, and like, but really, are we just outsourcing those things? Like, is the mother and father figure becoming a casing that is not enshrining like a singular person, but is now a village or whatever? Like, is that kind of what's happening?
Or is there breakdowns to some of these structures, which is what I'm worried about actually, is that there's in every epoch there's different dangers. I think we're at a place where there is a danger of certain symbolic authorities dying, and that does create problems in society.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that if I could look from a bird's eye view or from an aerial perspective of like my generation and the current times, it does feel like the running theme in everything, and I think it's ultimately because of the internet, but I think that the running theme is that we are seeing behind the curtain on everything, and everything is being revealed to be absolute shite, like absolute, just like, and that's a Northern Ireland word. But yeah, it's like the impetus of everything, and so then as a result of being like, oh, this is the president, and like, oh, this is, the lawyer saying that he helped hide Jerry Falwell Jr.'s racy photos.
Oh, I didn't hear about this. No.
I was gonna do a tweet that was like, if it's a photo of him reading, I'm going to call that the scandal. But I don't really know if he's a smart guy or not. But yeah, apparently, like, it's like one of those things where he is, this guy's a figurehead for the evangelical community, and it's like he's then there's a report about Cohen taking care of these like scandalous photos, and who gives a crap, first of all, but also why be surprised at this point? Like, we should be expecting all of these things, but as a result, it's like we're losing. I would be losing. I've obviously lost faith in the evangelical community, obviously lost faith in government, and it's like, yeah, you're right. Like, there is a kind of a breakdown, at least, even from my own subjective standpoint.
And they're interconnected, I think. So the two dangers, and I think they're definitely interconnected, is on one side, the non-castrated leader, which means, say, in a family, the militaristic father, as an example, or whatever, who is this figure, or the figure of the, whatever, the militaristic father is a good one. You've got, they're non-castrated, they are so strong. And that, and in political terms, the expert leader who thinks that they have the answer. Then on the other side, there is the complete breakdown of authority, which is that, you know, your parents are just regular people, just like you. And I actually know some families that do this, where they go, we don't tell our child off. In fact, we allow our child to make decisions. So one family I know, when they moved into their new house, they let their child pick which room they wanted, and of course the kid picked the biggest room, so the kid sleeps in basically the biggest room, and the parents are in the small room. But they're experimenting with zero authority. Well, the opposite. Their experience, they're like the idea that it's all authority is but a construct. But the way out of this, and I think they're both connected, because if you have a non-castrated leader, then that will just help destroy your faith in any leader.
Yeah.
They become a ridiculous caricature.
Yeah.
The trick is basically, and this is what happens in families when it's good, in psychoanalysis, what I'm trying to do in radical theology, is that you actually have an authority figure. But first thing is that authority figure knows themselves that they're symbolically castrated, so they know they're inhabiting a role for you. They have to do a certain role that's part of the development of the other person. It's basically how to help them become free. And then gradually the other person realizes that the leader is a castrated other. And then once that happens, the individual, so you know, if I'm the leader, I realize that I'm a castrated other. I'm just a regular person who's performing a role for people, just like a priest listens to confession, or a psychoanalyst listens to the talking of the analyze and
the aimless ramblings.
And then eventually the other person realizes that you're a castrated other, and when they realize that, they become free to embrace their own symbolic castration, and embrace basically the inherent antagonisms of life. And that process is deeply important. In other words, you need a guru who will teach you that there's no such thing as a guru.
Yeah.
You need a priest who teaches you that it's a priesthood of all believers.
You're talking about Tony Robbins.
You know, I think Tony Robbins might actually, in subtle ways, do this.
He's got some stuff that's not bad. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll listen to. I mean, I'll take all of it.
Is that right? I watched a documentary about him, and I gotta confess, I was going into it. I mean, I was interested, but probably slightly skeptical, and I thought,
I mean, talking about a caricature.
And doing some interesting things. Yeah. And I love the fact that basically, there was nothing about the documentary that was about his personal life, and at the end they asked him about it, and if I remember correctly, he was just like, that's not of interest. Like, basically, I'm a symbolic figure here doing a symbolic thing. I am not this person. My personal life is just as boring as yours,
and that's how he can probably keep his sanity.
Yeah, it keeps us on, and also it was obvious to me that he realized his own symbolic castration. Now, whether or not he is helping others acknowledge that, I don't know, but I was interested. Definitely, he was not thinking that he was Tony Robbins.
He might not. It might not be his job as whatever figure he is to make people realize his own symbolic whatever. Maybe his job is to be that sort of whatever, and then they go off and do their own thing. I feel like it reminds me of the conversation. Reminds me of the conversations I've had with my parents about transitioning from being a mom and dad to being like a friend and like a colleague and an adult. And it's like they have, been like they have to go, or I imagine most moms and dads have to go through a process of being like, I'm so used to playing this role and this character that is no longer necessary, and I have to like shed this skin a little bit, and that's a very vulnerable time, I think, for a lot of moms and dads, or at least in my experience, and for the kid too, to realize that your parents are sort of like people, and then to approach them as people in like a respectful way without also, bringing into the forefront all of the things that they did that when they were in the symbolic, like when they were your mom and your dad, and then being like,
these godlike figures.
Yeah, and I feel like a lot of people, it's like I've in the past wanted it both ways. Like, I want to be able to see my mom and dad as friends, but at the same time, they should know that I disagree with like how they, like how much I was, and it's like, well, like they were just doing the role, like they were just doing the thing that they, not that there shouldn't be communication and like talk about everything, but yeah, it's a fun,
and this is
fun thing to dissect.
Absolutely, and like the part of the child's kind of birth into freedom is at the point where they experience the symbolic death of their parents. So lots of this is to do with freedom, is that we hate our freedom. We really do. We want authority figures who'll tell us what to do and how to think. We go to astrology, people, whatever, to try to avoid, podcasts to get advice, self-help books. We're kind of terrified of, there must be another who knows what Lacan calls a subject supposed to know. There is another out there who knows the answer for me, and I've got to find him. But the part of the symbolic death of the family, I remember when it happened to me. I remember when I beat my dad at chess. Now, he taught me chess, and sometimes he would let me win, of course, and whatever, but there was a certain point when, and I don't think I really did win, but in my psyche, I felt that I really won. Like, we played a game, and he probably lost in a way that was believable.
Yeah.
And so and that was a traumatic experience, because for whatever reason, that was a symbolic death of the father. That's where I realized that he's just a regular person like me. But
when you beat him?
When I beat him.
That's funny, even though he was probably doing it.
Doing that. Well, that's the thing. That's the funny thing, is in one sense that the parents should be helping to facilitate their own death. But but I felt it as that. But that then changed how I viewed my father. He was more of a person, and that was a part of my maturity as well. At that point, I was able to kind of go, oh, he doesn't know what I should do with my life and how I should live. He doesn't have all the answers, because he's a divided subject. He's just an individual playing the role.
If I'm right about this and this chess move, what else am I right about that I've outsourced to him?
Yeah. So then I have to embrace the fact that no one has the answers about how I'm going to have to live my life, and I just have to muddle through and try and kind of work it out myself.
How old were you that you learned chess when you learned chess?
I don't know, actually. I'm really bad at remembering the ages. I was small.
I know, I'm bad at it too.
Really bad.
It's all the same.
Yeah, it's all the same. Yeah.
I can kind of go back to like school grade teachers and kind of pinpoint, but I always have to Google like what ages you are at what times and stuff. I've had to figure out what age I was several times. But anyway, that's very interesting. Yeah, I like that a lot. I'm happy. What did you think of the debate? If I can, like,
oh yeah,
did you care? Like, it was interesting because I'm so in that world, or in this world, I guess, since we're doing this podcast right now. But like, I love all of this stuff. That's interesting. I know, like, a friend of yours, Barry, who I love very much, is so great, but he was very critical of the debate and kind of saying how boring it was, and other people who are in your circle who I respect immensely and think are so brilliant, we just weren't that into it. And so I sort of was like taking my cue from what I was reading on Twitter and Instagram and just being like, oh, maybe this isn't, this is sort of a silly popcorn debate. But I kind of thought that going into it. Yeah. Did you watch it? Like, I saw you. You did commentary. I know you watched. Yeah. So.
Yeah, I watched it. And I did do a couple of commentaries, and I know. Yeah, and I am different from a lot of my friends in this, but I took it seriously. I think it was an important debate. I think it was a really important discussion to have, and had a certain cultural significance.
Yeah.
And I do think that there was a certain kind of elitist snobbery from some people, because this was not some sort of like academic talk. And there was a lot of people criticizing for a lot of different reasons, but I actually felt that it was I enjoyed it. I thought important things were said, and I think it needs to be dissected.
Oh, really? I felt like Zizek. I mean, just it became very evident up top. I think that Peterson was sort of not approaching it in a way that was going to make him the dominant lobster. Yeah. But also in a way that he could sort of, if you don't know it, you can't debate it. Like, you can't argue against something that you don't know. So the way he approached it, I felt like was interesting, but nothing. I always get, you know what it is? I feel like if I understand everything, something is wrong. Maybe that's its own Lacanian, somebody knows, but like I was listening to Peterson, I was like, no. I was like, there's times when he was talking, I was like, I don't think so. And then Zizek were talking, I was like, no, I can't understand what he's saying, but it sounds smart.
Yeah. Well, that is, no, you know what? I'm the same. And I think it's a good rule of thumb to have. Often if we don't understand something, we dismiss it. But actually, like anything profound, anything that has deep insight, the first time you hear it's going to sound kind of crazy. And as a good rule of thumb, if I understand something straight away, kind of like, oh my, yeah,
it's gone.
It's gone. And also I worry because it's so simple.
Yeah.
So I want to get into. I'm drawn to in any discipline. I think when you get into it, like mathematics, physics, chemistry, anthropology, philosophy, it's like if you can understand it through watching a YouTube 30-minute thing, you're not getting into the heart of it. It's actually really painfully difficult, and I still find it painfully difficult, and I have studied it for 25 years now, and got a PhD in philosophy, and when I read some philosophers, I'm still have to do it slowly, carefully, and talk it through with people, read it multiple times,
because you're in the meat, you're in like the sinewy, like this is the real stuff, whereas I feel like the problem with debates is, among many others, is that it's sort of just very cursory and very like, oh, okay, yeah.
I mean, that's the issue with the lobster thing. Is a good example. Is it's very simple. It's like we all agree there are hierarchies. We all see hierarchies in the animal kingdom. We all have a basic understanding of evolutionary theory. All of that.
Survival of the fittest is a pretty easily understandable
term, and it's not that any of that's wrong. It's just once you give it an extra twist and you go, okay, but what happens when we realize that humans live in a symbolic universe as well, and then you go, oh right, so, and then you kind of, okay, so authority works slightly differently, and then you got into much more interesting areas.
Yeah, because it's also like if we're living in a symbolic world, that basically is this weird virtual reality that we have, that we sort of have created or whatever, and you have all these like avatars that people step into throughout your life, and all these figures and symbols and yada yada. But what's funny about it is like when you start talking about it, I guess this would be a dialectic thing. If you see, I'm learning it. Well, maybe I'm completely wrong. When you start getting into it, there is, I lost it again. I don't know what's going on. I think I'm tired.
Yeah.
It's the fourth cup of coffee. There's something about society that you're in, and then it's like a virtual because the ironic thing is when you hear symbols you think it doesn't matter, but then what actually happens is they affect your life more than the actual real life situations. And that's like it's one thing to be like, well, symbolically, but that almost sounds like you're minimizing it. But we are so affected by symbols and so affected by the avatars and like the whatever that it's just as real as the not as the actual stuff.
And it's even like, and it's more real in a way. Like if you get stopped by a police officer, symbolically they're a police officer, and their power only comes from the fact that we as a society basically believe in the power of the police. It's like money only works because we all believe it's worth something. It's not, it's just a piece of paper. In fact, now it's just knots and ones. It's just digital. So the only reason why it functions is because we all believe in it. But that's more part of the police. If we don't believe in the police officer, and this is a problem some people have, where they just look at the officer and they see a normal person, they see a 25-year-old kid, and they don't give the police officer any authority. In a way, they're wrong, because the virtual reality of the police officer is more important than the reality.
Police officers keep us safe because we believe they keep us safe.
Yeah.
It's like the I think therefore I am, but like extrapolated.
Yeah, I mean, kings are powerful not because kings are inherently powerful. It's because we treat the king as powerful. Yeah. It's like if we all stop believing the king is powerful, the king's power dissipates. It's structured because of all of these levels of belief.
Yeah. And conversely, if the king starts to believe he's actually that powerful, he'll become a tyrant. And
it's a disavow, like was it Joffrey in Game of Thrones or whatever. You know, the disavowal of your symbolic castration means that you fully identify with your symbolic self, and then you become either a caricature, half laughable, and also incredibly dangerous. So for me, the trick is, how do we acknowledge our symbolic castration? So Marcus Aurelius had somebody walking around saying, "You're but a mortal,"
Yeah.
to kind of remind him of this fact. But also then, if you're a parent, you have to, there's a certain point when you have to reveal to your child your own symbolic castration. As a religious leader, that's the way. For me, religion is a disavowal of castration. Religious gurus pretend to be all powerful.
Yeah.
But also, you do this, like, that's why revenge is the sweetest success. Is like, if you pretend to be not
You mean
symbolically
success is
castrated.
the best revenge?
Yes, what did I say?
Revenge is the best success.
Oh yes, exactly. The way you said it's right.
Yeah, the way you said it, there's a lot to unpack there. Have fun with that.
Success is the best revenge, in that if you pretend to be powerful and successful and hide your symbolic castration from the other, then they start to be jealous and they start to all of this. So you can hide it from yourself, but you can also just hide it from other people, and that's just as bad. Is whenever, say, a religious leader pretends that they are the non-castrated. The trick is, as a parent, as a priest, as a psychoanalyst, is to gradually reveal your own symbolic castration to the other. That helps the other realize there is no subject supposed to know. There's no other out there who is the ultimate expert who we should give deference to, so that we embrace the contingency of existence and make our own decisions.
It's like when you're going out on a date,
right?
And you're like, I'm gonna be Mr. Suave, for this girl, and I'm going to puff out my chest because I am the lobster, and then it works, and that's terrifying, because then you have to continue to pretend to be like Mr. Tough Guy. And I see a lot of people who are in very long relationships who have, with each other, have seemingly never shown one another that they're like not these sort of perfect partners for one another, and they just sort of like, it's the Facebook couples and the Instagram couples, and you're just like, do y'all know, like, do you guys, like, have you cried in front of each, like, have you shown each other that you're not perfect and that you're castrated, for whatever term you want to use, and so a lot of like relationships, I feel like, are just a process of being like, I'm the lobster, I'm feeling this thing of like, I'm a charming guy who's gonna just, I'm gonna take care of you, and then slowly being like, hey, show my hand, here's the truth, I'm not that great, and then getting to that as quickly as possible, I think, is probably good too. Yeah. That way you're not like living a, lie.
Exactly, and realizing you can step into these, because the whole point of hierarchy and human structures is these structures exist, and exist for good reason. So you can step into these symbolic spaces, you can act out father, mother, lover, all of these different roles. It's just acknowledging that the roles pre-exist you step into them, and they also are not you. They represent a part of you, and recognizing that is just a healthier place to be.
It's more free. It's like, oh, I'm not, and it also allows you to go through life and be like, I am not my job. I am not just being a husband or being a partner or being whatever. But also recognizing that those things are important and good.
And the danger today, like, here's my fear of today, the danger is not on the, less in family life, on the non-castrated other, but more on the thought that there is no authority whatsoever, that actually mothers and fathers are just real people, and all of these authority structures are purely non-existent.
Yeah, pretending that a symbolic world that we live in doesn't exist, or that we can like easily escape it or do away with it, or that we should do away with it, or
and obviously that's very dangerous. I mean, if you have, for example, a family with a very strong, a very weak, like non-existent authority figure, then the children will grow up and will probably be really into, for example, the New Age, astrology, all of this, like this weird kind of, the universe knows the answer and oneness. Like, you'll see a real increase in people who can be manipulated by palm reading, astrology, even though intellectually they don't believe in it. So the weird thing you'll see in society is that people don't even believe in these things, and yet give their money and their energy and their time to them.
You are such a Leo. I had that locked and loaded.
Oh, that was good. Yeah, that was good. From the very beginning. This morning.
You are such a freaking Leo. Do you know what you are? What your symbol is?
I am Aries. Yeah. What are you?
God of War, is that what that is?
Is that, I suppose, the ram?
I don't know where that came from.
Wow.
If that's
like
true, I have no idea. I'm Pisces. I'm a fish. I'm of two minds about everything, which is why I totally don't believe in astrology. I just, happen to believe it.
Yeah.
Astrology I can't get on board with. But anyway, for some reason, anyway, so yeah, you're right. It's very interesting because you see the breakdown happen and they seek it in these sort of like,
Yeah, so because in one sense the role of the authority figure in a family is to, well, one is you give yourself over to them as having the answer, and then they enact their own death, so you realize they don't have the answer, and so you're able to live with a lack of answer. You embrace contingency. But if that doesn't exist, if that structure doesn't happen, I just think that generally you'll see it in weird societal symptoms.
I don't know if there's anything here, but in terms of the Christian world, there is a tendency, and I don't necessarily disagree with it. I think everyone is on their own journeys, and it's beautiful, and do your thing. But there is, in my experience, I went from sort of believing in a symbolic God who had a beard, but I believed in him literally.
Yeah.
That he had, eyes of fire and long flowing beard and long hair, and he was just as, generally masculine and father and all that. And then exiting evangelical Christianity, one of the lily pads onto which I hopped was the sort of mystical approach and mysticism. And I thought about when you mentioned the New Age stuff, because it's like, people who, if you don't have the strong father figure, or you have an absent father figure, you can seek these things in this sort of like very sort of loosey-goosey type of thing. And it's interesting to me that once the father figure of God in my brain was truly not like fitting in anymore with my psyche, then it became more about mysticism. It became more about like, but literally, like, when I think about mysticism in my head, the way I conceptualize it, it's literally God becoming mist and becoming like everywhere and dissipated,
that's why you're wrong.
Exactly.
This is the problem. Because here's my interest in Christianity. Right, in Christianity, God experiences God's symbolic castration, which is very rare. So in other words, you presuppose.
You're talking about the crucifixion?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's a bearded
God.
You're
talking about the crucifixion?
Yeah, you know where I'm going. There's a bearded God, a being that's whole and complete, lacks the lack, is not symbolically castrated. And then in the crucifixion, God says, my God, why have you forsaken me? In other words, God experiences the loss of God.
Which I love when Zizek brought that up. And Peterson was like, oh. And I was like, yeah.
And then he completely misunderstood it. That's funny because Zizek brought it up, and then Peterson completely misunderstood what Zizek was saying. Because, this is the point that Zizek was making. He's making the point that in Christianity, God engages in self-castration. If you don't go through that, what you do is you end up going into mysticism.
Yeah.
So a lot of people
just taking it and just going and dispersing it into cells and atoms, instead of being like, oh no, you're still not. You haven't gone through the kind of what's called the ontological lack, the experience of the rupture of the other that helps you embrace your own freedom. It's called salvation.
Salvation. Salvation is when you go through the crucifixion. That's it. And I've just come back from a festival where our entire the intellectual side of it was all about conversion and salvation, and it was exactly this argument that if you do not go through the symbolic castration of crucifixion in family and psychoanalysis and theology, then what you end up doing, is that you seek a subject supposed to know in some, not in your mother or father, but in some political cause, in some religious cause, in the universe itself. That's what I mean.
It's a cloud. It's always some kind of weird cloud.
And that's exactly what I meant. It was really good that you picked it up. It's exactly what I meant when I said the lack of the authority figure who dies in a family leads the young people to then start embracing New Age mysticism.
Which and that said, I have no problem. I love all that, but I do think that the journey to get there is short-sighted if you go from one to the other and just like, oh, this is I view it like this now. And it's like, well, but I was listening to or watching a video of a podcast called Your Mama's House with Tom Segura, and Pete Holmes was the guest, and it was just like responding to Christian jokes, like, and it was basically this YouTube video of this pastor being like, what's up, modern day church? We're going to talk about comedy. A lot of people think Christians can't be funny. Well, here's some Christian jokes, and it's just it cuts to people telling Christian jokes to one another, and they're so bad that they're
Yeah.
it's truly, and Pete Holmes put it great. He was like, this is heartbreaking. He was like, these are still my people. He was like, he was like, they're a humorless, culturalist group of people.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's so very, very true about so much of the church these days. But the jokes that they were saying were just like so boxed in and so whatever. And Pete Holmes made the point of like, no, the salvation part is when you feel it, like you die to this stuff. You die to the like idea that there's anything out there, and then after that you come out and you're like, and I was thinking about that in terms of my own experiences, obviously, and I was like, oh, that is kind of what it feels like. It does feel like salvation when you go like, oh no, like and then you can come out the other side and be like, and you know,
and this is why like the church in a technical sense is pre-conversion. In the confessional church that we know has this idea of a non-castrated God or other, and then when people leave it, and I know loads of people who leave it, but then they just embrace the non-castrated other in terms of politics, in terms of causes, or in terms of the universe. The interesting thing about Christianity is, I think, in its non-confessional radical space, is, and this is what Shizak means when he says only a Christian can be an atheist, and what he means is that actually within Christianity you have the death of God, where God experiences the death of God. God undergoes symbolic castration, and so if you do not experience the death of the authority of the other, then you have not gone into the true atheist experience. You will weirdly not believe in God, but you will still have a subject supposed to know. You'll still be susceptible to that at an unconscious level. So only when you go through symbolic castration will you experience salvation. And there you go.
Good times. Do you have a takeaway, Pete?
Oh yeah, okay. Takeaway. Very. So I think this went in really interesting directions and places, but basically, takeaway is, I would say that authority structures pre-exist us. We are born into them, and we are not one with them. We play certain roles, and dangers arise when you disavow your symbolic castration or you hide it from other people. And that part of becoming a mature person is experiencing the symbolic castration of the other, your mother, your father, your political figures, religious figures, and then embracing your own symbolic castration. Very hard to do, but that is the path to freedom. And the path to freedom is one that we're terrified of, but it involves embracing that. There you go.
I mean, yeah, I was gonna say the same thing.
Same thing.
Yeah, I mean, I really enjoyed this podcast episode very much. I did not know, I like how little I knew about where it was going, and I like where it went. I also will say,
I loved how you brought up, by the way, at the end, how you saw what was it? The religious connotations of the crucifixion. So yeah, I think that was good.
What did I notice?
That the crucifixion is in a religious language or cultic language a description of the symbolic castration
the death of God,
of the absolute.
Being abandoned by the symbolic, something. Yeah, man, I really like this. It's the structures and the and then also I'm being in the dating somebody, and then also like having dated people, and then also going through just growing up processes. And I think there's like in your 20s you go through different stages, and in your 30s you go through different stages. And being in my 30s, I'm really enjoying sort of like, I think I'm past the disappointment that happens when you realize these things are symbolic. I mean, obviously it's going to happen again and again with different things over and over and over again, whether it's relationships or whatever, politics. But the stuff that was super traumatic for me, or like the stuff that was really difficult and still is a little, but like the Christian stuff, the religion stuff, I feel like I'm at a very exciting time right now, and it speaks to that fact that even though it's terrifying to accept that these things are symbolic and to accept that these things are castrated or whatever term, it is worth it to go through the sort of salvation, so to speak. I like I really like the confessional church being pre-salvation. Is that what you're saying? Yeah, it's very fun. It's like, well, you're kind of there. And I know that like during the video I was watching yesterday, the way that Pete Holmes described it, which he's so good at that, but he basically was like, people see in the modern church, they see the fruit that is born out of it, whether if you read the Bible or whatever, and it's these stories of death and triumph and resurrection, and life springing forward and all this stuff, and they see the fruit of it, and rather than go through the process of it, they sort of just want to take the fruit and adopt the fruit, and they sort of pretend to be these like perfect people, and then when it all goes away, it's like extra scary. And I feel like that happened to me growing up, as I just adopted all of the things of all of the like. I'm also working on this book right now, and it's like I'm so nostalgic that I'm going through a lot of like these church days and what that felt like to be like, oh, this is what I was really thinking and doing, and like the role that I was playing. Especially because getting married when I was 20 years old and like all this, and getting engaged at 19, there were so many parts of that I know were a result of being like, this is what I'm supposed to do. This is Christianity. This is the truth. This is the way to be. It is perfect, and salvation is perfect, and God is perfect. I am now going to adopt sort of the perfect Christian lifestyle, and then it all fell apart.
And this is, by the way, one of the values, I think, of confessional Christianity, is that it actually just exposes the structure that we're all caught in. So kind of pre-conversion Christianity is this idea of there's an absolute, whole and complete, and it's kind of like a really good example of really what most of us are caught up in. And then you experience the breakdown of it.
Yeah.
You got married because of it. You did all of the stuff that you did because of it. Then you experienced its collapse.
And things I did because of it also served a purpose in my life and protected me from the freedom I was terrified of.
Yeah. The danger for a lot of people, I think, is that they experience the collapse of it, but they don't experience the collapse of the subject supposed to know. They just experience the collapse of that particular subject.
That they have,
I see. Of that particular subject supposed to know. So they still then are susceptible to a conversion to another worldview, another position. Whereas the real trick is moving from an unbroken myth to a broken myth. Paul Tillich talks like this, where he says, where actually you experience the auto deconstruction of your own position. And I think Christianity can be very good at that. Where again, it's not that you stop believing in God, it's that God stops believing in God. Mm-hmm. And that experience of the other basically that experience of you seeing the other as symbolically castrated frees you from the very structure of a subject supposed to know.
Yeah.
And that for me is what you can call salvation.
I also think that there's something to be said for, I love that. I also think there's something to be said for the death of these things, and like the sort of like whatever, it's like you can't intellectualize your way to it. Like I really think it's a felt experience, and it is existential. And I know that like in my beginning days when I was first going to therapy, much of my sessions were sort of about, well, I know this, like I believe this, and I know that this is the case, and I know that like I should do this or shouldn't do this, and then years into doing it and years into sort of like quote unquote working on myself, the big moral of the story is like, who gives a crap? Just live your life, and when you live your life, you sort of will find out where you stand and what you believe. But like, just engaging with life more fully, I think, is a helpful tip. Yeah. And
the way that you had to do that, as you say, is to go through certain practices, like and therapy is one of them.
Did that, meditation,
to get to for the first 15 years of my vocation, I spent doing practices. Sorry, oh my goodness. First 15 years of my, in fact, I'll pause for a second. We can cut that out. The first 15 years of my vocation was setting up practices that helped existentially experience what we're talking about, because you say it's not something that you intellectualize yourself out of. You can, as I say, believe that tarot cards or whatever don't work, but still do them. Use that. We've both done tarot cards at various times and all of that. So it's not bad to do these kinds of practices, but we can get caught up in this idea of a subject supposed to know. And the challenge for me is, how do we create technologies that help us existentially become free of those things, so that we can do them but in a playful way and not be caught up in them in some unhealthy way.
Love it. Well, what a podcast we've done here today, Pete.
Yeah,
I think we did it.
And this is the difference between existentialism and kind of mysticism. Basically, existentialism is about embracing that freedom. And that there is no subject supposed to know. But I think it's just fun.
It's so fun. It's also fun just to like find
there's such a joy in finding the words that encapsulate the feeling that you can't really, that the word really doesn't. Existentialism, nihilism, these are things that like, it's beautiful that we have this language, but there's really nothing that like, it still doesn't explain, the whole thing. Anyway.
Yeah.
Cool. Any closing, goodbyes,
I think
plugs?
that was fun.
Well, thanks everybody. We'll see you next time. 59:36.
15. I enjoyed
That's my
doing
favorite.
that. And
Me
you
too.
liked it? Oh, good. I wasn't sure because whether you were enjoying it or not, but I thought it was really good.
Oh, I
thought
loved
the
it.
conversation was fun. I hope you enjoyed it if you're watching live
Thanks.
on my Patreon. I'm so glad we got to throw in some religious dimensions to it.
Well, yeah, because I think I forget that that's what people kind of want to.
Yeah, but it's not too much. It's just we kind of got there. I kind of feel like felt the second half we really kind of got into it. So bye.
Bye, everybody.